Welcome back to JavaScript Fundamentals 201. This is lesson 7, and today we will begin to depart from talking about just the JavaScript language and start talking about how we use it within the browser. So today we are going to talk about events, primarily keyboard events, which are raised when the user presses a key on the keyboard. Now, one other change is that I've moved back into Web Matrix, but I'm trying out this split screen concept. So on the left, we have our code, and then on the right we have the browser. This allows me to have the code a little bit larger as far as text is concerned, but also not so crammed, because in JS Fiddle all of our code was broken up into 4 panes, and things would get just a little squunched as far as trying to work all of this on the screen at one time. So I've opted to use the code editor and the web browser, kind of what we did with JavaScript Fundamentals, except now this is going to be a split screen thing because right now it makes sense to do so. Okay, so let's talk about some of the events that occur when the user presses a key on the keyboard. Well, there's actually 3 main events. The first event is the keydown event. This occurs when the user presses a key on the keyboard. The second is the keyup event. That occurs when the user releases that key that they just pressed. And then the third event, not to be confused with the other, is called key press. Now, this key press event does not occur for modifier keys. So if you press the shift key or control or caps lock, the key press event is not going to fire. So that is going to be the difference between the key press and the key down and the key up, because key down and key up does take into account the modifier. So if you press the control, shift, alt, caps lock, numlock, any of the modifier keys, the key down event and the key up events will fire, but not the key press event. Another difference between the key press event and the key down and key up events are the information that these events give us. The key press event is primarily designed for user input because it fires for every key other than a modifier key. So we are going to use different properties to get the information on what key was pressed with the key press event as opposed to the key down and the key up events. So we will look at all 3 of these events and how we can get information from these events that occur. We're also going to look at some of the differences between standards-based browsers and legacy Internet Explorer, because as we learned in the first JavaScript Fundamentals course, there are differences between those 2 event models, and the same holds true for keyboard events. Well, before we get started, let's look at our HTML first. And it's very simple. We have an input element of type text with an ID of txt, which is short for text input. Then we have our references to our script files. The event utility script is what we wrote in the first JavaScript Fundamentals course. We will revisit this object because we do need to write some cross-browser code for keyboard events. And then we have script.js, which is the script file that we will be working out of. Now we are going to add our event handlers to our text box object that we have with txt input as its ID, but we can actually set keyboard events on any element because any element can receive those events. If you wanted to add hotkeys to your web page, you could do that by listening for keyboard events on the document object. So you can set an event for any element, but a text box makes more sense, especially in today's case. So let's first set an event handler using the key press event. So we will call event utility, add event, we will specify the text box, and then the key press event. And then we need a function to handle this event. So function evt, because we still do get an event object that's passed to our handler so that we can use it inside of our event handler. And it's going to give us 2 different properties based upon the browser that we are using. So here we are jumping right into cross-browser JavaScript. Hooray! Okay, so for standards-based browsers, we get a property called charcode. And this is going to return a numeric value that contains the ASCII code of the character that was pressed. So for a capital A, it's going to have an ASCII value of 65. So charcode is going to have 65 if we type capital A. And capital B would be 66. And this will go all the way to Z, which is 90. The lowercase letters begin at 97. So lowercase a is 97. And that goes to lowercase z, which is 122. The number 0 starts at 48. And then the number 9 ends at 57. Now, of course, you're not expected to memorize these ASCII codes. It's not going to make you a better programmer if you do, and it's not going to make you a horrible programmer if you don't. I don't have these memorized, but I do have a cheat sheet. I am going to supply a link to Wikipedia, which has a table of all of the ASCII codes. So if you ever want to look them up, you can go to Wikipedia and find those codes. Now, the charcode is for standards-based browsers. For Legacy Internet Explorer, we have a different property. It is keycode. But even though it has a different name, it gives us the same value. It is the ASCII character code of whatever character was pressed. So using keycode or charcode, we can write cross-browser JavaScript in our event utility. So let's add a method. We'll call it getCharcode. And like our other methods, this is going to accept an event object because we are going to determine what to return based upon if the browser supports the charcode character, because we always want to test for standards compliance first. So we'll use the type of operator. If event.charcode equals a number, because that is what charcode should be, if it is a number, then we will simply return event.charcode. Otherwise, we will assume that it is Internet Explorer or Legacy Internet Explorer, and we will return event.keycode. So to use this method, we simply go back to our script.js. Let's change our code to var code, and then we will call event utility.getCharcode. And then we will pass in the event object. And then let's alert code. So if we save this, and if we refresh our browser, which I magically had things typed in there, I pressed a lowercase a, and you can see that we are getting a charcode of 97, which according to here, that is true. So if we type Z, we are going to get 122. Once again, that's what I have listed. If we type capital A, which I'm holding down Shift A, now notice I have Shift pressed right now, and notice that there is nothing popping up as far as an alert box. That's once again because the key press event does not occur for modifier keys. But the moment I press the A key, it's a capital A, and we get the key code of 65. And I'm going to press caps lock. I'll press B, and we get 66. So if you use caps lock, you're going to get capital letters naturally, and you will also get the capital letter key code. And by using the key press event and our getCharcode method, we can limit or filter the keys that are acceptable within an element. So if we want to limit our text box to only alphabetic characters, we can do that by simply getting the character code, which we've already done, and then seeing it if it's within the range of our uppercase alphabetic characters or our lowercase alphabetic characters. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do an if statement. If code is greater than or is less than or equal to 90, actually let's do greater than first. Let's do greater than or equal to 65. And if code is less than or equal to 90, so this is our uppercase character range. This also make this its own little self-contained condition because we also need to check for lowercase. So we will do an or. If code is greater than or equal to 97, which is lowercase a, and code is less than or equal to 122, that is our lowercase z. If any of these conditions are true, then we don't want to do anything. Otherwise, we want to prevent the default. So we will call event utility, prevent default, and we'll pass in the event object. So let's get rid of this alert. Let's refresh the page, and I am typing alphabetic characters. I'm typing uppercase alphabetic characters. But if I try to type anything other than that, nothing is going to be put inside of that text box. I'm typing numbers right now. I'm typing punctuation. And punctuation might be something that we want to include. So we would have to look up the character codes for punctuation and make sure that those are added as well. But we can also do the reverse. If we want to accept anything but alphabetic characters, all we have to do is put our prevent default inside of the true portion of our if-else statement. Let's refresh the page, and now as I type alphabetic characters, we can see that nothing is entering the text box. But as I type anything other than an alphabetic character, punctuation included, we can see that those are added to the text box. And you can use this to enrich the user's experience with your web page. If you have a text box that's only supposed to contain numbers, you can write the code to filter out all other key presses and only allow numbers. You can even take it a step further and display a little message to the side that whenever they press some other key, that this message just displays saying that this text box only allows numbers. Now, you wouldn't want to do that with an alert window because that takes away from the user experience, but you can use dynamic HTML to dynamically show or hide an element that would contain the message to enter only numbers. And that's pretty much it for the key press event. It's a very simple event. All we have to do is get the character code and then do something with that character code. Well, next, let's look at the key down event. And really, whenever I said that we are going to look at all three events, key down, key up, and key press, we can combine key down and key up together because they have the same properties. They give us the same information. It's just that the key down event when the user presses the key down, and then the key up event fires when the user releases that key. So we are just going to look at the key down event, and then you can apply the same thing to the key up event. One of the differences is that we don't have to use our get charcode method with the key down or key up events. All we have to do is use the key code property. This works in every browser, and it's going to return the ASCII code of the character that was pressed, except there's going to be a slight modification. Like for alphabetic characters, it's going to return 65 through 90, regardless if it was an uppercase or lowercase a. So we don't have to worry about 97 or 122 or anything like that. The reason being because the key down and key up events give us access to the modifier keys. So we can check to see if the shift key was pressed, or if the control key was pressed, or if the caps lock key was pressed. So we have those abilities by using some properties which are going to work for every browser. The first that we'll talk about is the alt key. So we can create another variable. We'll just call this alt key, and it is EVT, or our event object, dot alt key. This is going to return true or false based upon if the alt key is pressed. The next is the control key, and it is CTRL and then key. And like alt key, this is going to return a Boolean value based upon if the control key was pressed or not pressed. The other is the shift key, and guess what? That is the shift key property. This returns true or false if the shift key was pressed. So the key down and key up events give us a finer set of information that we can use to do some pretty cool stuff. Like for example, let's say that we want to add a hotkey to our web page. Let's say Control B. So the first thing we need to do is change the element object that we are listening for the key down event. We've specified document now, so no matter where or no matter what element has focus, the keydown event is going to fire for the document, and therefore our event handler will execute. We can also get rid of the rest of this code. And since we are going to listen for the control key, I'm going to get rid of the alt key and shift key variables. And then we just need an if statement, if control key. And remember, this is a Boolean value, so we don't have to compare that to true. It's automatically going to be true or false. So if control key and if code equals 66, because this is going to be the letter B. And once again, it doesn't matter if it's uppercase or lowercase, it's going to use the character code of the uppercase characters, so 66 in this case. Then we want to alert a message that's saying you pressed Control plus B. So let's save that. Let's go to the browser and refresh. And the text box doesn't have focus, but if I press Control B, we see the message box. You pressed Control B. Although that is bad grammar. Pressed. There we go. Let's refresh. And even if our text box has focus, I'm going to press Control B, and we get that message for us. So that is basically it for this lesson. That was the key press event, the key down event, as well as the key up event. So we are going to continue looking at using JavaScript in the browser in lesson 8. So I will see you then. Have a good one and take care.